you're a man of not a few talents. You're a man of many. Drumming, you've already referenced. Voice acting is a tag you use all the time. You do computer work professionally. I want to get into a little bit of those facets before we go back to stream for a second. Talk to me about your music background. Or were you like my older brother was a drummer too, and I grew up in the same bedroom as him, and that dude always played super loud. And always never, and I wanted to play video games. He's like, just turn the volume down, and then we're both happy. I'm like, I'm not happy. You're banging drums real loud. So that's my association. But talk to me about your music background a little.
Okay, gladly. You know, I come from it's in my DNA. My family is a long line of musicians and singers. So like my mom and my dad like sang in church like their whole lives. They were like a quartet, you know. So it was my uncle, my mom, and my dad, and then like their friends. They always just sang together like wherever they went. So that, I mean, they were phenomenal, so good.
Wow.
And I learned piano at a very young age. It's kind of like, we require you to learn how to play piano. If you want to do something else, that's fine. But my mom was like, piano's first. So I learned piano, and then they bought a drum set for my sister at some point, and they got it like a garage sale, and she ended up not being very interested. And so we had this drum set sitting there, and I got on it and started playing the Ants Go Marching, as everybody does. Dun, 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 dun. That's all I could do, is play Ants Go Marching. Well, my grandpa comes over one day, and he was a jazz musician like his entire life. He played sax, and he was like, let's mess around with some jazz beats, whatever. And so it was like a jazz kid, had like a sizzle ride and everything. And he had me work on like some little jazz hits, and he gave me like brushes and everything. And so I'm sitting down like working on this thing, and it's kind of amorphous. That style of drumming doesn't really have like a regimen to it or anything. You just kind of feel the beat. And as I got more comfortable with it, my parents were like, okay, you're loud, you need lessons. So I took a lesson.
You're going to do this crap, I want it to not suck as much. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you're going to be this loud, let it be pleasing to our very musically inclined ears, because you're killing us, Yeah. So I got lessons from this guy's name was Chad. He's a phenomenal teacher. And I worked with him for like a year. And after that year, he was kind of like, if you want to keep doing what you're doing, you're going to have to, go somewhere, do something else. He kind of was like, I can't teach you, anymore the way you want to go, because I want to start doing like double bass stuff and like intricate fills and everything. And I was like, okay, well then, where do I go? And he kind of directed me towards like online stuff,
Oh, okay.
So then I started playing with a band. And so all of this, I guess, started around a little before junior high.
Okay.
So I started playing drums around junior high.
Okay.
And I've played ever since. So I've played in a couple of bands on my own. I played in school and high school. I was in like the marching band and all that stuff.
Yep.
But then growing up, I ended up playing at a couple of churches, one of them like a mega church in the area.
Okay.
And that was the most intimidating, because I went in to try out, right? And this is for like, a 10,000, person church.
Jeez.
And I go in to play at this place, right? And the tryout is a boombox, and then like this group of people that I've seen on stage just like go.
Yep.
And I was like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. And I remember the feeling, like everything was shaking. Like it was like,
it's like the set of So You Think You Can Worship.
Yeah, it was literally, it was like, so you think God is on your side.
That's
and I was
right.
like, I think, but I'm going to find out real quick.
We're going to see.
Yeah. So I played, and it went great. It was awesome. And I've been playing, there for like 15 years or whatever. But, then I started working in a studio, and a guy in the area had me start recording with him. Did a bunch of studio work in there. Our band got signed to like a development label called, what was it called? Oh man. Alien Patrol, I think is what it was called. So we were together in that band for like 6 or 7 years. And then it kind of turned into me producing music for commercials and writing jingles and stuff like that.
Wow.
And that started morphing into it. Yeah, it's weird, right? And I don't know how it came about, except for that, like I was working in the studio with my friend, and I kind of put my name out there. That was like, hey, I've done some commercials. And one came back at me that was like, hey, we have this kind of family arena that does laser tag and things like that, and we need a jingle. And I was like,
wow,
okay, I'll take a stab at that. And after it worked out, I ended up getting like a bunch of hospitals and stuff like that. I wrote their jingles and songs for the commercials and everything. So that turned into its own little side career. And that is what gave me the studio capacity to do what we're doing now,
wow.
And yeah. So like, I started making enough money that I could like write off purchases for that studio. And so I don't know, we never got to meet when I was in my old house. We just moved in the last couple months, but that studio was years in the making. I mean, like 5 years. I loved it. I loved the whole layout. I had the lighting right, the positioning right. Everything was great. And I thought that that was going to be like my Twitch studio for forever.
Yeah.
We moved. And that's why I use a green screen now, because behind me is the wall is right here. This is the wall. It used to, I used to be against the wall and behind me was everything else. Jeez. So I had to, switch everything else. But I'm sorry. I'm going on a tangent. You're talking about music. So
tell me about you, man. Tangents is where we live. That if you don't go on tangents, is it really Keebs? I don't think so. So
I know.
We need to keep going.
I'll address the chat with this real quick. I'm sorry, you're learning real quickly about, like, when you ask me a question in the stream, this is what happens. I'll see the mark and I'll aim the bow and someone else will say something and I'll go over here.
That's right.
I want to let go. Like in cartoons when they let go of the bow and it's like,
yeah,
it finds its way to it'll get there. I'll find my way home. Okay. But
wandering down the road with no clearly marked exits is a wonderful adventure.
Yeah. So but as far as vocally, I've always sang because my family does. That was kind of it was. I didn't have a choice. It's just built into me. It was kind of like, you're going to sing. You get used to it. So I was in audition choir and traveling choir and all that stuff too, growing up. And so that is what opened up, I think, the vocal range for voice acting. And that was something that was like, I think everybody. I think everybody thinks they can do something really well. I thought I could do voices well. Everybody thinks they can do, something, and their parents are like, "You're the best at that, son." And you're like, "Oh my gosh, I could do this." And then you go to do it, and the director's like, "You're really bad. Who told you were good?" And you're like, "Ma,"
She doesn't care about you much because you're not good. Like exactly. That, they just look at you stone-faced and do that. Okay. Oh my gosh.
That was one of the most helpful pieces of feedback I ever got as a singer when I was recording with our band. Because I had to do drums and singing because our lead singer dipped right when we started our recording. I ended up drumming and singing for our whole album and everything. And I go in and lay down this one vocal track, and the director stops, right? And you hear the click, it comes on, he goes, "Can we do that again, except don't suck?" And I was like, okay. My feelings were shattered, but I kept that with me.
Don't suck.
Yeah. Internalize that.
Interesting note. Okay.
Right. Yeah. It was productive. It was constructive. It was all of the octaves that I needed. It was the octu, that I needed to get me to do the right. And then the next couple of times it was great. But it took me taking that shot where I was like, oh, wait. That was just honesty. I know that he didn't do it well. The dude was young. He could have been better about that. But at the time, that's actually what I needed to hear. And I think that that's important now, especially when I've done auditions and everything for voice acting, and someone comes back and they're like, "That wasn't good." And I'm like, "You're right. It really wasn't. I didn't give my best performance. I may have, slurred this or done that." And we go again. And usually director's like, "Great. All we needed was you to just roll with that. Don't let your pride get in the way, and let's do it again." Now, the problem with live streaming is there is no "that sucked, do it again." That sucked. Now there's the VOD. Someone clip it because you screwed up, and now we have it forever. It's on the internet. It's a lot tougher in that facet.
It's a vulnerable exercise. Yeah. One thing I pick up on it here, which is the nugget I see buried underneath that story, and the musical background is very interesting and impressive. Anyone that's seen you play or seen any of the music that's brought in the stream knows that. But the nugget I pull out of there, you said it right at the end. When someone gave you a criticism, you hop in and go, "Yeah, that wasn't good. I know that. I can do better than that," or whatever it is. And in this space, criticism is like, if I were to sit here and criticize somebody, or if you were to criticize somebody, you hate that person. You don't want them to succeed. And it's not that all the time. In fact, the only way to really grow and do this, or any content probably, is to, again, surround yourself with the people that will give you the honest feedback to grow in that direction. Because to intertwine this with the social aspect of it, there are two forms of competing priorities. You got to be liked by everybody, and if everyone likes you, they'll like your stuff. But I don't want any of that, because I want the stuff to be good, and I want the stuff to be what people enjoy. Two very different mindsets that often compete in this space, I think. And I respect the hell out of the approach and the mindset that comes out of that story that says, the stuff's the most important. I want the stuff to be right. To hell with my pride for a minute. We're going to do it the way that it needs to be done. And that shows through. That shows through. So the fruits of your labor are paying off, I would say, in that respect.